Welcome to Aurorin Expounded, a series where I go into all the world-building details, all the nitty-gritty fun of the lore and fantasy of the world, without having to slow down the pacing of an actual episode of D&D. And I figured, what better subject for a first episode than that of one of the most important facets of any D&D world, especially if you have any clerics in your party. So, why don't we start off with the three Pantheons of Aurorin. Within the world of Aurorin, the gods can be split into three categories, that being the World Pantheon, the Soul Pantheon, and the Ascendancy Pantheon. The three Pantheons differ greatly in both age as well as function. There is some overlap between the three, however, for the most part, the lines are clearly distinct. So, without further ado, let's get into the first and oldest pantheon, the World Pantheon. The World Pantheon mostly govern over the natural world and its functions outside of the realm of mortals, such as the land, the sky, and the sea. Gods like Rokmarok, god of the earth, Rezevlin, god of the sea, and Isarion, god of the wind, not to forget Insidious, god of fire as well. The World Pantheon is also home to the four goddesses of the seasons, such as Hiero for winter, Matriel for spring, Aestaril for summer, and Nieraut for autumn. Other functions such as, the sun, the moon, time, all that stuff will all fall under the World Pantheon as such, and we can get into the specific gods and goddesses in a much more in-depth specific video for each of them. The job of the World Pantheon is to keep the world spinning and functioning. While they do have clergy, worshippers, and clerics, most of the gods of the World Pantheon will function just fine without them as well. They don't typically delve into the realm of mortals as often as our next group. Segway! The Soul Pantheon is by far the largest group of gods that exist within the world of Aurorin. These are the ones that deal much more with mortals, their affairs, their feelings, and with society as a whole, rather than the natural world around them. Not that they don't have any influence over the natural world, but if they do, it's typically much more specific in what they deal with. A lot of the Soul Pantheon can reflect certain lifestyles that mortals take, such as Agthalon, who is the patron god of farmers, or Slyvirix, the patron goddess of thieves. It's not just lifestyles that the Soul Pantheon encompasses, but also sort of more abstract concepts, such as dreams or justice. This pantheon is also a lot more diverse in terms of the alignments that the gods and goddesses take, much more so compared to the World Pantheon, whose most of their alignments are neutral, reflecting the stalwart and unchanging nature of, nature. If this pantheon has much more sway over mortals, then what happens when a mortal becomes a god instead? That brings us to the final pantheon, the Ascendancy Pantheon, which is also the youngest of the three. The Ascendancy Pantheon consists of gods and goddesses who did not start off as divine beings, but attain that status later in life. This is where the two dragon gods sit on their thrones, such as Bahamut, the god of platinum dragons, and Tiamat, goddess of chromatic dragons, as they were the first of their species and ascended to godhood after the fact. Obviously, this is within the context of Aurorin and not actual Forgotten Realms. There are also gods and goddesses that consist of things like a goddess of adventurers, goddess of travelers, as well as, maybe a loot hoarding god? This pantheon is by far the smallest, but also has room to grow unlike the rest. I know that these descriptions were brief, however, I wanted to give room to be able to go into each of these different gods and pantheons in detail in their own unique videos. Later, as they become relevant, or perhaps by popular demand, we can go into the histories and actions of these different gods and goddesses and be able to figure out what makes them tick, who their champions are, and, how they interact with the players in other campaigns I run in this world. And also, good rule of thumb for DMs is keeping the world just vague enough that your players can have a little fun with it, so they're not locked into certain things when creating their characters, which is another reason why it's a bit vague on some of these topics as well. I know this first episode was pretty brief, but I've been remaking this about 4 to 5 times now, just trying to get it formatted the way I like it, and almost kind of as a bit of a test run, bit of an experiment to see how I wanted to format these videos. And this is probably going to be the best way to do it until get a bit more wiggle room for some more artwork, things like that. I'd love to include that on later videos, especially as we go into more detail about certain characters and gods and goddesses, of course, and different historical events as well. I hope you've enjoyed this brief and basic overview of the different categories of gods in Aurorin, and each of them will get their own video later on, and if they don't have quite enough meat on their bones to be able to make a full-fledged video, such as the 4 goddesses of the different seasons, then they'll probably get their own shorts later on, just a little tidbit. Thank you all for watching this little experiment, and I hope to see you all in the next episode or on stream. Links to all the socials are down below, and don't forget to support us on Patreon. And speaking of patrons, thank you to our very first patron, D-Fourtress. Don't know if you made this profile just to support us, or you were a fan of D-Fourtress to begin with and it was just fate, but either way, we are incredibly grateful for your support, especially as our first patron has taken the $5 a month tier. You have no idea how much this means to us, the whole crew, because holy crap, like suddenly it feels like we're actually real, we exist. So thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.